Hello and welcome back to day 3 of the deep dive days of the GPT-3 Makeathon from TUM.ai. My name is Omar.
I'm Nora.
And we're super excited to have you back here.
Today, again, as always, you'll find a Slack channel where you can ask the question for this talk in the general channel. So go there if you have any questions.
Yeah, have this clear. So yesterday was a bit business. Today is the part that I actually like. Today it's going to be all about tech. It's going to be all about technology. Today we have the Flutter workshop. So our workshop today is sponsored or supported by the DSC Club. DSC stands for Developer Student Club. They are community groups supported by Google for university students. And they help students who are interested in Google technologies bridge the gap between theory and practice. Sounds too good to be true. It exists. It is true. I can say that. Today we have not just one, but actually 2 speakers from DSC. The first one, Kilian Schulte, is not only a member of this club, which really helps students kind of put things into making, like the way we do it here at the GPT-3 Makeathon, but he's also a co-founder himself. He's the co-founder of Upride, and he's an entrepreneur, something that we also, if you haven't noticed, kind of support here. And furthermore, he's also a Flutter freelancer, and that's why he's here today. I mean, it's a Flutter workshop.
Makes sense. And Kilian, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Perfect. Good. Next up, we also have Viviana Sutejko. Hope I pronounced that correctly. She's also just as impressive. She's also Flutter Freelancer, 2-time Google intern with Flutter, and is currently doing her computer science master at TUM. Also an absolute expert on Flutter. So Viviana, are you also here?
Yes, I am. Hello, and thanks for the invitation.
Yes, nice to have you here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Excited to have you here. So, guys, I hope you guys, both of you are ready. If you are all set and ready, you can go.
Stage is yours.
Yeah, go for it.
You just have to share your screen, I think.
Yes, let's wait for Kilian.
All good. We can see it now. Perfect.
All right, great. Then let's directly get started. Welcome everyone to our introduction to Flutter workshop. We already got introduced, but I'll introduce us very quickly. I'm Viviana. I'm joined today with my close friend and colleague Kilian. We have been working on several Flutter projects, which are also in production right now together. And also we are Flutter freelancers right now, and we hope that we can get you started on your Flutter journey as well. So what will we do today? First of all, I'll introduce to you what Flutter is, what you use it for, and also why it is so awesome. And then we will work together to build an awesome app, AI Boost Tumbledore. Basically, it's just a chatbot. You can enter any question you want, and GPT-3 will answer that, which you can see here on the right. And we built this app with the thought in mind that you can directly use this app as a baseline for your Makeathon project. So this workshop is intended for anyone, even people who don't have programming experience yet. We will try to explain everything in detail. However, just keep in mind that the coding part might be a little bit fast on some parts, and don't worry about that. You don't need to understand everything. We will provide you with the code, and you can just use it. All right, so with that, let's just get started. So what is Flutter? If you ask Google, you will get this answer. Flutter is a cross-platform UI framework. What does that even mean? Well, cross-platform means that you just write one single code base, and then you can convert it into any platform that you need. For example, the awesome thing about Flutter is you can not only convert it into an Android app or an iOS app for iPhones, but also into a web app, which lets you deploy it on most of the common browsers, and even since recently for desktop apps for Windows, macOS, or Linux. So that's really, really cool about Flutter. Flutter is a UI framework. That means that it was written with the intent that you can write beautiful front-end designs with it. So it comes with a lot of beautifully pre-designed components that you can directly use out of the box. But of course, all of them are customizable, and your creativity really knows no boundaries with Flutter. Now, I'm saying Flutter is a framework. It's not a programming language, because the programming language behind it is Dart, which was developed by Google in 2015. On the right side, you can see some code snippets of Dart. And if you have done any programming before, you will have no difficulties at all understanding it because it's basically a hybrid of most of the common programming languages. And even for people who don't have programming experience, Dart is a really easy and nice way to start learning how to program. Dart also offers type and null safety, so that's really nice to know why something is happening. And it offers asynchronous code execution while running on a single thread. So you don't have to think about mutex logs and so on. Lastly, even though Flutter is intended to write front-end code, you can also use Dart in the backend. So this enables you to even do code sharing between your front-end and your backend code. There are even more reasons to learn Flutter. So first of all, there are a lot of Flutter developers nowadays worldwide, and the community is growing rapidly right now. So it's really awesome to be able to just exchange ideas, exchange your creativity, and solve problems together with people from all over the world. Flutter is really easy to learn. As I said, we've also taught this already to many people who don't have a programming experience before, and it's just really satisfying to see your app come to life after such a short period of time. Flutter is 100% open source, so you can always look it up and even contribute to it yourself if you want to. Because Flutter is so awesome, a lot of companies are switching to Flutter right now. So if you can write Flutter code, you will also have a lot of job opportunities. And lastly, Flutter is also used internally by Google for some of their apps. So it also offers steady support and is quite future-proof as well. So now that you know how awesome Flutter is, let's get started with the actual app. Before we can actually code something, of course, you need to install and make your computer ready for programming. On the right side, you can see the install guide, the link to the install guide, and you need to follow their instructions there. Also, by the way, we have the link for the slide deck on the bottom right. If you want to look up any links or the code base, everything is uploaded there. Basically, what you need to do is the same for every platform. You need to download and install the SDKs as well as an editor for your code. We recommend Android Studio for this. You can then also set up your IDE with their plugins. And lastly, if you want to do some mobile app development, if you want to deploy it on your real phone, for example, you need to either install an emulator or enable developer settings in your phone. And with that, we're all set to go. I will hand over to Kilian, who will show you what we will be building today and how we will set up a Flutter app.
All right, thank you, Vivi. Right, so as Vivi already mentioned, we have all the source code, what we are building today on GitHub, so you can look it up. And it's very intended to be used as a starting point for your app. So after the workshop or at the weekend when you are building your application, you can pretty much take the code that we have on GitHub and then continue from there, right? So what we are building today is this little chat app. You already saw a little screenshot of it, and it's connected to GPT-3. So I've asked questions. So how are you? We get an answer from GPT-3. All right. How you get started with the Flutter project, actually. So you can either do it via terminal if you're a terminal guy. So there's the Flutter command, and then you can say Flutter create, and then give it any name like my app or something. I want to show you another way. So when you are using Android Studio, which we actually very much prefer, then there is also a create new Flutter project button, and it walks you through all the process of setting up your Flutter app. So again, give it a name. You can put also a description. You can choose here, very important, which platforms you want to use. So if it should be an Android, an iOS, or a web app. Also, you can enable it to target the native platforms. I would leave that all checked and just create the basic app right now. All right, and before we look at the code, I actually want to go through the folder structure a bit to give you an overview of how we what folders are and what files are actually existing in one of those projects. So we have a couple of folders like Android and iOS and web. And those are, as you probably guess, the folders for the native codes. So when you have done an Android project before, you will notice some of those files. Most of the time, you don't really care about those folders, only if you want to really do some native stuff or change something in the native configuration. Also, maybe in the web folder here, you see the index.html, you see the favicon, so all the stuff that you normally also have for web apps. Then the most important folder actually is the lib folder. This is where your Dart files will live in. So right now we only have one. This is the entry point for our app. And a very important file also is the Pubspec.yaml. This file basically defines all your basic aspects of your app. So the name again, the description, you can give it a version here. This is also the version that will be used on the Android and iOS apps. So when you build and maybe publish them, those are the versions, the version numbers that will be used. Also down here, we have the dependencies section. There are a lot of packages that are already built by some other Flutter developers that you can use. And there's a very, very huge library of packages and all open source that you can download and use. So you don't have to invent everything yourself. And we're gonna also do this in this app, so we come back to that later. Down here are a few more options. So for Flutter, when you have some image assets or some font assets, there are, as you can see, also some documentation on how you can use that. All right. With that, let's open the code. Yeah, and see a little bit around. So we have the main function, which is the entry point to our app. So that gets called when the app is started. Then we say run app, and we provide the my app widget. And this is a class down here directly. And you see there's something like a stateless widget. And this is a very, very important part of Flutter. And before we dive deeper into the code, actually, Vivi is going to tell you a little bit about what a widget actually is.
All right, thanks, Kilian. Widget. Spoiler alert, basically everything on the screen that you can see is a widget. So if you see a text on the screen, that's a text widget. If you see an icon on the screen, that's an icon widget. So everything, the entire app is just a bunch of widgets collected together. So if you go to the next slide, you will see the widget tree. So a widget tree is basically just a lot of widgets that come with Flutter that are nested inside of each other, and that makes up your app. So yeah, Flutter comes with a lot of standard widgets, but as you can imagine, if you build your entire app just with one widget tree, like just by nesting a lot of these widgets together, it will become very unreadable very quickly, and you don't know anymore which part is written where. So instead, we can define our own widgets, our custom widgets. Basically, we can take any subgroup of that or subtree of that widget tree and define that as one widget. Let's call it my custom widget, for example. And the nice thing about this is it's not only shorter to read or easier to organize, but also, as you can see in this widget tree, we have the same 4 elements, the same subtree 3 times. And instead of writing the same thing 3 times, we can just use our custom widget 3 times. So that's really nice. Just a fun fact, of course, since everything can be a widget, also the entire app is just another custom widget, as you saw also what Kilian just showed you. So how do we actually write our own custom widget? First, we have to define the class. So we write class and then we give the widget a name. Let's call it my custom widget. And then we have to tell the class that it is in fact a widget. So we have to extend stateless widget. The stateless widget offers many functions, but the most important one that you always have to override is the so-called build function. This function is called every time the screen or the app wants to know what it should actually show, so which widgets it should show on the screen. So what you need to do here is you need to return the subtree, so the column, the icon, and so on, in this function. So you need to override, you need to write this function and return, in this case, the column. The column widget has multiple widgets as children, so you write children, and then you put the icon widget and the container widget, And the container widget has another widget, as you can see in the image, which is the text widget as a child. So yeah, this was a very quick rundown of how to actually write a custom widget. And with that, let's go back to Kilian, and he will walk you through the rest of this main.dart file.
Okay, thanks, Vivi. Yes, so we know now what a stateless widget is. So we see here our app, which is the entry point to our app. Is just another widget. We have our build method, and then we return a material app. The material app is one of the many cool widgets that directly come with Flutter. And in that case, the material app is a widget that handles very much different things for you that you would normally have to do when doing an app. So like navigation or theming and title and stuff like that. So you see a theme here. A theme is where you define all your basic colors and styles and appearances for your app. So in our case, we have a primary color of blue. Also, I forgot to start the app, so I can show you what it looks like. Yes, so that is so we see our primary color blue is here applied at two different places actually. So we have one here on top, it is blue, and here on the bottom we have this button, and this is also blue. And the nice thing about themes is that we have it in one place, and when we change it here, then both these places, or maybe also other places where we use the primary color, gets updated. So we don't have to like repeat ourselves every time for colors, but this can also be like text styles and stuff like that. All right, then continuing here, we have a home page. And this is again another widget that we defined ourselves, so another custom widget, and also we give it a title. Okay, now that started, I can show you when I change the color here to, let's say, red, and save that. Here both the button and the app bar gets updated to red. And this is also a very nice feature of Flutter, which you just saw, is that when we change something in the code and then we save, it gets automatically applied to our app, so we don't have to restart and rebuild our app every time. And this is called hot reloading, and it is performed automatically every time we save. And the cool thing about this is actually this is a stateful reload. So in this example app, we have like this button, and when we push it, there's this counter on the screen that gets updated. And now when I go again and change this to, let's say, green, you see the colors get updated, but the state actually keeps. So we don't lose our state. We can still continue to test our app, and this enables really fast and performance development for your app. All right. So we have our homepage, and here we see now it doesn't extend stateless widget, but something else that is called stateful widget. And in Flutter, there are a couple of types of widgets actually. So there's the stateless widget, as you saw, but there's also the stateful widget. And as the name suggests, there is a difference that the stateful widget has some internal state. So any values, any data that is kept by this widget, is kept by this widget, and in our case, this is the value of the counter. So the 7 right now, and this is a basic variable that we have, which counts the button presses. And so whenever we have some internal values, some internal data, we have to use a stateful widget for that. So the structure of this is a little bit different from a stateless widget. We don't see in this class our build method, right? We don't have it. But instead, for a stateful widget, we always have two classes actually. We have another class down here, which is a state class. So we have a widget and a state class for a stateless widget, and those are very tightly connected. So whenever you do a stateful widget, you always have to have those two classes. And then when we scroll down a little bit in those in the second class here, we have again the build method. So this is just a little different syntax. We eventually have the same build method and we do the same stuff in the build method, but it is a little bit different structure because here we have in the state class our data. So in this case, the counter, it is initialized with 0. And when we press a button, this method is called and we increment our counter here. So the next thing is whenever we are in a stateful widget and whenever we want to mutate our variables, whenever we want to mutate our state, we have to call the set state around it. And this makes sure that the UI actually is updated. So because when we just increment our counter, maybe the UI doesn't get re-rendered, but it has to be. So we call set state around it. And then basically Flutter knows that something changed and it will call this build method again. And then this again renders our widget tree and updates the UI on the screen. All right. So what actually is in the build method here? We have our app bar, which we have here on top. We have a text widget. Then we have the center and the column, a few different things. Maybe most important here is the text widget again, which then prints out the current value of our counter variable. And down here we have a floating action button. This is this button at the bottom, which here has the onPressed property, which links to this method, which we saw above, which then increments the counter. So yeah, those are a few basic widgets that we have. Another thing I want to show you before we continue with our own app development is the Flutter inspector. And in Android Studio, you have it here on the right. You can click on it and it opens and you see the representation of our. Remember, our whole app is just a large tree of widgets. And here we can look at it, inspect some different values. So we have here some properties of our, in this case, text widget. And also when we can activate this button, and then it actually highlights the thing that we have selected here directly in our app. So in this case, the text, or I can switch to the app bar. It highlights the app bar, shows us where it is. And again, and also it jumps to the position in the code. So this is a very nice tool to, again, develop your app, see maybe how you build up your layout, where you maybe want to improve something, or when you have something that doesn't look as you want it. This is a very nice tool to see where the issue is. All right. So now let's actually get started on building our app. I'm going to start from this template. First remove some of those comment stuff. I want to give it another primary color. So I want to give it like a light orange. And also let's disable the highlighting so we see it. And then I want to give it a dark background color. So there's a property called a scaffold background color, and I set it to a dark grayish tone. And now we have this dark gray background here. I also want to, like, we have this debug banner here on top. Just as a personal preference, I want to disable this. This is a property in the material app, widget. So set this to default, and this banner here gets hidden. Also, I want to, of course, change the title here of our app. So our app is called Ibis Dumbledore. We were very creative with that name. So yes, and I'm continuing cleaning this up a bit, deleting stuff that we don't need. We don't need the counter because we are building a chat app. Delete some of those comments, and I'm actually going to delete the whole body here because I want to start clean app. And I have to put something here just to that it compiles. And whenever you want to just put something there but don't know what exactly yet, you can put a placeholder widget, which comes with Flutter, which is a very nice widget when you are developing your app. And save this, and we see the placeholder puts this cross here, and you see where it is, and it's just when you are still in development. All right. And with that, we have basically our starting point from our app. We can now start developing like this chat UI that we want to have. But before we're going to do this, I will give back to Vivi, and she is going to tell you a bit about some basic widgets that you can use in your app.
All right, thank you. So Kilian already showed you some of these, but let's look at them in detail. The first one I want to talk about is the container widget. And if you haven't done any front-end programming yet, you can basically imagine it like just a rectangle, but a rectangle can have a lot of different attributes, right? It can have a color, it can have round borders, corners, it can have like spacings. So a container is just a very versatile way to just lay out your code, or I mean your app. So the first property is the child property. The child is basically just another widget. So whenever you want to put something like a text, for example, inside of a container to lay out the text, for example, then you would put it into the child. So with child and then write the text widget. If you want to change the color of the container, you can say color, and then you say it's for, and then there's the margin. The margin is basically the outside space. So it's the space that Flutter adds on all sides of the rectangle. So in this case, we're adding 10 elements on all edges of the container. We also have a padding, which is like the inside space. Basically, it's the space that it adds on the inside of the rectangle. In this case, if we have set another widget as a child, then it would add 10 elements on all edges of our child, but still inside of the rectangle. We can have an alignment, which is where the child widget would be inside of the rectangle. So it can be like on the top left or bottom right. In this case, it's in the center of the rectangle. We can have a width or a height and many different attributes that we won't discuss right now, but you can easily look up if you need them. Now, oftentimes you don't need an entire container. Often you only want to add, I don't know, like a spacing around something. For example, if we have a text widget and we just want to add text, we can use a more specific widget, a specific container, so to say. In this case, for example, we can use directly a padding widget, which is like a container, but it only has the two attributes, the child and then the padding. As you remember, the padding is the space that it adds around the child. In this case, we are adding 16 elements on all edges of the child widget. And it looks like this. Yeah, as you can see, there's now more space around this text. Of course, we don't always need to add it on all edges. We can also specify which edges we want to add it to. In this case, for example, we can say we only want it on the horizontal edges, left and right, or we only want it on the top and the right. So that's also very customizable. Another special container, so to say, is the align widget. So as I said, you can specify where you want to place the child widget inside of the available space. In this case, we are aligning it to the top left. Even more specific widget is the center widget, because you need it so often that you want to put a widget on the center of the available space, that there's a specific widget for it. And obviously this widget only has the child attribute and not an alignment attribute, because I mean, the alignment is clear, it's the center. Yeah. Now the next widget you've already seen, the text widget. And the text widget takes obviously, first of all, the text. But then obviously you can also customize how the text itself looks. So you can add a text style, which is basically everything that you can also do with, let's say, Word. For example, change the color, change the font size, change the font weight. But there are also more things that you can do. For example, you can add how it should behave if the text is too long for the available space, or how many lines this text can have maximum. So yeah, even this is very customizable. Another very basic widget that you will probably come across if you do app development is an icon. So icons are just like these small like images, I would say, in the app. And the nice thing about Flutter is that it comes preloaded with a lot of the icons that you might use. So you don't have to go and like download icons and import them into your project. You can directly use them by just typing icons dot and then whichever icon you want, in this case an add icon. You can, of course, also customize the look of it with the color, the size, other things. So yeah, those are some of the most basic widgets. Now let's take a look at some more complicated layouting. So let's say we have this thing. This is a very common app design. And how would we build this? Basically, if we analyze this further, we have 3 things next to each other, right? And that is a row. So there exists a row widget, which allows you to put things next to each other. And obviously, since we have multiple widgets right now and not just one single one of them, we don't have a child attribute, which takes one widget. We have instead a children attribute, which takes a list of widgets. And you can see that this is a list because of these brackets. And in this case, obviously, it has 3 widgets inside of this list. Let's take a look at one single widget. So as you can see, on top, there's an icon, and on the bottom, there's a text. And because they are on top of each other, this is the same principle like the row, but in vertical direction. This is called a column. The same principle, we have a column widget, we have children, and children takes a list of widgets. And in this case, there are only 2 widgets, the icon and then the text. And yeah, this is how you would lay out some basic widgets. There's a more advanced way of doing columns and rows. It's called list view. And the list view is just a fancy column, I would say, for example, which also comes with the scrollable functionality. So if it's too long to fit on the screen, you can also scroll it up and down. All right, so that's all nice and cool, but so far we've only had widgets that show something, but nothing where we can actually interact with the app. So one way to do interaction is, of course, buttons. And Flutter, as I said, comes with a lot of pre-designed things that you can directly use. One of them is this elevated button widget. And this comes, as you can see, with rounded corners, with shadows, nice color. But also you can customize it if you want to. You can change everything about this, or you can write your own buttons, of course. So first of all, it also has a child attribute. This is what will be shown on the button. But also the basic functionality for all buttons are the same. You have an onPressed attribute, and this attribute takes a function. And basically what it does is every time you press this button, this function is executed. So whatever is written inside of these curly brackets will also be executed. In this case, it just prints button was pressed to the console. Now, sometimes or oftentimes, if you write an app, you don't only want to print something, you have like a very complex, long logic that you want to execute when a button is pressed. So instead of writing it into the widget, which will clutter your widget tree, you can also just write a normal function as you know it, just like define the name of the function and then write whatever you want to do. And in the actual code for the widget tree, so in, for example, the build function, you only say whenever this button is pressed, execute the function called onButtonPressed. And this, will make your code a bit more readable. And with that, I think we have all the tools that we need to actually write our code. Back to Kilian.
Right, thank you, Vivi. So let's get started on actually building our chat app. So where we left off, we have the My App, which is a stateless widget, which handles some basic theming. We have the My Homepage, which is a stateful widget, which doesn't have any state right now, but we will leave it because we need it later. And then we have a scaffold with an app bar and a body, which right now is just a placeholder. So this is where I want to continue. So let's change the placeholder with a container. And now I want to give the container a little bit of a padding. So inside space. Let's change this. We see nothing because the container is by default always transparent. Inside this container now, I want to put a text field, right? Because we want to send some messages, and I want to start with that. So there's a widget called text field, which already, when I save this, is a working text field. So I can type something, and So let's make it a little bit nicer. So we want, because we have a dark background, let's give it a text color of white. So it has a white text color. And also let's give it a little bit of a, it's called decoration in Flutter, which basically sets, so when we don't have something in here, like this message hint that we here set with the hint text. So just a few nice properties to make this a little bit nicer. Then, of course, when we enter something, we have to process our input. So, and there's the on submitted function here. So yeah, same with the button. I don't want to write all the code that we need here in here, but I actually want to create a new method for this, and method send message, because we want to send a message to the AI and want to get a response. So in this case here, let's just send message, and yeah, now this gets executed. So I can just to show it to you, let's say I want to print out the message. Open up this here. Let's type something. Hello, and we see it here in our console. So that already works. The method gets executed with the string that we have entered in our text field. Now let's start actually with the cool bits. We have to make an API request to OpenAI, to GPT-3. In order to do this, we have to add go to the pubspec.yaml file here. I go to the dependencies section, and there is a packet from a packet which is called HTTP, which gives you some basic HTTP functionality like GET request, POST request. All right, now I paste this in here with the version number. Then I have to either go to the terminal and type a command, or I can just press pubget, and this will execute this command for me. So the command is displayed here. And this will fetch all the package files and install the package on our system so that we can use it actually. Okay, so back in our import this package with this, and now we can, again, when we are in our send message, we have like a http.post, which then does a post request to an URL that we can specify. Now, before we can do actually our request to the OpenAI API, of course, each of you will have a key, like an access key to that. And we want to show you how you can best do this. So one simple way, you could just define a string, a top-level string here where you put your API key. But we really don't recommend this, because what you want to not do actually is to put this on GitHub, and then everybody can see your API key, or put this something like when you upload your repository, you use Git or something. You really don't want to publish your API key for obvious reasons. So we want to show you a quick method where you can hide from anyone that isn't supposed to see it. So instead of doing this, you can say from environment, and you can set a environment string for Dart that then you can access and use. So let's just call it OpenAI key. And now when we run our program, we have to provide that key somewhere. So there is, so like when you, okay, let's do it this way. When you run your app via terminal, so you have this command flutter run. Yeah, that's basically it. So you can do this, and then it will run your app. In order to provide this AI key, you have to say -- dart -define, then set the name that we use, so OpenAI key, and then equals, and then your key. You can paste it like this. I, for now, will use another method, but you can just enter it, will run your app. When you run your app via like Android Studio or some IE, you have here on top a run configuration that you want to modify. So yeah, click here on edit configuration, and you have this additional run arguments where we basically provide the same thing here. So we have the dart -define OpenAI key, and then you can put your key here. I don't want to show you my key, so I'm going to use something else. I have this actually as a system variable. So I just going to do it like this. But again, you can just paste your key to the dash, and this configuration will be published to GitHub. So this is all right. Let's say play and OK. And I have to restart the app real quick. So because we have changed our run configuration. All right, and this will build now in the background. All right, so now suppose we have our key here. We can actually go on to make our API request. So first we have to provide a URL. So this URL you probably already know, or you might want to look into the API documentation. I also have the link here for you if you want. Again, this is also on GitHub and documented and up. Then we have to provide some headers, especially the authorization header with the key that we just installed. And for somewhere my build is failing. Okay, let's just make it so that it actually compiles. Okay, I hope this works now. So we set the headers, and then we have to set our body. So, and the body then gets like the prompt that you have to put in, and all your additional properties. You might maybe already be familiar with it, or you can look it up, whatever you need here. This Json Decode function, you can press Option and Enter and then import this library. Although this is an import, you don't have to put something in the Pubspec.Yaml. So this isn't a dependency. This comes with Dart actually, but you still have to import it. So just do this, and this will put this import statement up here. All right. Now we have to provide some type of prompt, obviously. So we are just gonna use the basic chat AI example that you can get from the playground. So you will notice probably this. And now, so I set this as like a global, a class variable, sorry. And now I want to extend the prompt with our message, right? So we have the start of our conversation here, and then I want to put a new message like human column prompt, and I want to add a string. So I want to first add a new line, then I want to add the human with the message that we put in our text field, line with the AI colon, so that the OpenAI can complete here the rest of the line. All right, and with that we have our API request. So what we have to do is in front of here, catch the result. And now we have our result from the API. And right now, let's say just print it out. So print out result of body, save this, and see if it works. So let's enter some text here. Say, hello, how are you? And wait for the response. All right, so we see here now some output. This is a JSON, so the API responds with some JSON. We have some IDs, some properties. Maybe most important one, the choices here. We have one choice with the text attribute, and this is then actually where the answer is. So we have to read out the response, we have to parse it, and then look up the choices, and then look up the text property here. So let's do that. All right, so first decode the body since it's a JSON, and we can do this with the Json Decode property. Then we have our body, and then we can read out our text. And this is the body at the property. Then this is a list, and we want to take the first the first entry in this list, and then we want to take the text property. And I mistyped here. All right. So now we have this. again the text. And I can again send the same thing. Let's see. And the text is empty. Okay. Let's try something else, actually. Did I miss something? Okay. Let's restart. So whenever you're stuck, just click this button. It will restart your app and it will work again, hopefully. Let's try. Yeah, nice. So this is the output that we get here now in our text property, text variable. And yeah, pretty awesome. Now, oh yeah, I think what I was wrong. We actually have to add the response to our prompt, right? Because the next time we want to send a message, we want to keep the previous response, and the playground does this automatically, and we also have to do this. So the only thing we have to do is our prompt plus equals the text that we got. Also work like when you send continuous messages and yeah, all right. So one thing you might have noticed when I send something, the text still is in here and I would have to delete it, and this is not really nice, so let's make it a little bit nicer. In order to control what's inside a text field, there is something called a text editing controller, and we have to edit up here. So we make a new variable, which is a text editing controller. We have to provide that controller back here. We are now in our build method where we defined our text field and properties, and now also a controller. And we have this variable. And now we can access this controller. So what I want to do is whenever we send a message, I want to reset the text field, right? I want to delete everything that is in here so I can continue typing the next message. So this is done by text editing controller.text, and you can set it to anything you like. In our case, just set it to an empty string and it will delete your text. Let's try this. And yeah, so the text is gone. I sent it, and again, don't get any response. Maybe just reset. Let's try. Okay, let's try some like real stuff. Who is Elon Musk? And let's look at our console here. Yeah, Elon Musk is CEO of Tesla and SpaceX. Let's try like continuing the conversation. So when I ask how old is he, let's see what we get. We get he is old, and I just assume this is correct. Awesome. So like the communication with the OpenAI already works. Now we just have to like finish up our app, finish up our chat UI. Yeah, and let's do that now. So let's switch to the working thing. So pretty much you already are familiar with it. We have some chat bubbles. We display them on different sites. We display different colors based on if I'm writing it or if I writes it. Yeah, so I could go ahead and like design all this myself and do this myself, but I'm very lazy and I'm not going to do this. Also, the other reason is there are a lot of awesome Flutter developers out there that have probably already done this. And so what I want to show you now is actually how you can get a dependency, use a package from Flutter that someone else has developed. And yeah, so there's a site called pub.dev, which is like the package directory for Flutter. You can just search for anything you might want. We already searched for something. This is called Bubble. And there's the Bubble package. And yeah, so you get some documentation, you see how it looks, and this is exactly what we want, but you can also like modify that. Some more documentation. Yeah, so how to install it? There's this like copy icon up here. Just click that, go back, open your Pubspec YAML, go to the dependencies section where we already have the HTTP package, and paste this in here. And that copied for you like the name of the package and then the current most recent version that you can use. Now let's save this. Again, you have to say pubget or execute the command yourself. This will again download the package and install everything for you, so you can use it. Now, before I'm going to go ahead and actually build our UI, we have to store the messages, right? We have to keep track of what we send, keep track of what the AI responds with. So in order to do that, I'm going to create a new class, a new data class. And this is called message. And so I want to have two attributes. One is the text that I or the AI sent. And then I have a Boolean, which just tells me if the message comes from me or comes from the AI. Now, every class needs a constructor. In Android Studio, there's a nice key combination that you can use, Command N, generate it. All right. Yeah, and now we want to use the message, and we have like our chat history is then a list of messages, right? So we go to our widget and we define a new list of messages. We want to use messages and set it to an empty list at the start. And then now, whenever we want to send a message or whenever we receive an answer from the AI, we have to add those to the array. So in here, when I call the send message function, I say messages.add. I create a new instance of this class. I set the message and I set it to true. This was the me property, so because I sent this message. And also remember, I said it in the beginning, we are mutating a state property here because we have like a variable inside a stateful widget, which then should re-render the UI when we change something. So we have to call setState around it. So never forget that. The other thing, so let's get a bit done here. I want to remove the prints. We don't need them. And we receive the result. And obviously, we want to add like a chat bubble for this also. So again, messages.add, create a new message. This is just because we get like the text that we get starts always with like a space. So we remove that. We set it to false because this is not our message. This is from the AI. And again, it's called setState around it. And then we like continuously build up our list of messages that we have. Right now, let's display them. I want to make it so that like we have the most area here with a like our list of messages, and then down here in every setup the text field. So let's wrap actually the container with the column. So because we want to display stuff underneath each other. And you can either like do it manually, but also again, there's a key combination. You can press Option and Enter and say wrap with, and you can select wrap with column. This will already wrap whatever you selected with a column. It provides like a children. We have a list right now. In this list, there's only this one widget. And now since we want to have this on the button, we want to add something above it. And what we want to add is a list view. And Viviana told you about it. So it's like a scrollable list of other widgets that we want to use. We have to provide a children array or list. And also I want to provide a padding, and the list also has a padding. I set it to 20, so like we have some space around our chat bubbles. All right, let's save this. And yeah, we don't actually see anything because the thing with the column is we have to say that the list view should take up like most of the space and more or less press the text view to the button. And this is done with a widget. So we have to wrap the list view with a expanded widget. Now when we save, we should see, yeah, the text field here is now on the bottom. Everything else should be the list view. We can actually check this in the inspector. Let's set highlighting on, select the list view, and we see this is now all the scrollable area that we can have our chat bubbles in, and down here is our text field. Really neat. Now I want to distinguish it a little bit, so I set the container here. I set it to a little bit more lighter gray. So we see it now here. Yeah, so last thing more or less to do is set the chat bubbles here. So we have to provide the children to the list view. We do this by, like, we have our messages list and we want to convert this or transform this more or less to a list of chat bubbles. And we can use the map function for this. If you don't know what a map function is, it takes this list of messages and it applies some transformation on each element. So in here we get one message, so one element of this list, and we can do whatever we like with it and return something new. And in our case, we want to return a chat bubble. And since we installed this this bubble package here, we have now a bubble widget actually. And you can also see this comes from this package here. Select this. And this now also did put a import statement here. Here it is. So Android, if your IDE doesn't do it, you have to remember to import the package on top. Where am I? There, the bubble. And then, of course, we want to set the message inside the bubble. So it has a child attribute. We say we want to use a text widget and put the message in the text widget. All right. Oh no, actually, this is a class. We want to provide the text of the message since this is our custom message class. Save this. Let's see if I type something. I have to disable the highlighting. If I type something, we see now a kind of a chat bubble and also the response. Now we have to modify this a bit. Of course, we want to change the appearance based on if it's from us or if it's from the AI. So there are a couple more properties on the bubble widget that we can use. So one is the color. And I'm going to set this. This is like, if you don't know this operator, this is like an if statement. So we say if the message is by me, I want to give it an orange color. And if not, or else, I want to give it a gray color. Save this. And we see we have now, this is from me, this is from the AI. Next, so next attribute is a nib. Again, if it's by me, let's say I want to have a nib at the right bottom, and else I want to have a nib at the left button. This gives us here this little guy. Next one, set alignment, also another property on the bubble. Set it to right if it's from me, set it to left if it's from the AI. And very last property is just give it a little bit more spacing around those around those bubbles so that those not clustered. So spacing it out a little bit, giving it a margin here. Yeah, and so this is pretty much a working app already. So again, like what is green? I don't know. Green is a color. Nice. So we have a working chat app. Just make it, yeah, in the remaining time, I want to make it a little bit more nicer again. if we have time, I think so. I want to put a send button here so that we can actually also press the button. I want to wrap the text field for this with a row because I want to put like 2 widgets next to each other. And next to the text field, I want to put an icon button. And this is like a special type of button which just displays an icon. And in that case, I want to display a send icon, which is this like this arrow here. And I also provide a onPressed callback. And in this, I want to send the message, and I want to send the text that is currently inside the text field. And I do this by utilizing our controller that we have, and say controller.text, and this will get the text and send it. Now let's try it out. Yeah, again, I have to be careful about the sizing. So I want the text field to have all the space and just have the button really low. I have to wrap this again with the expanded. That was it. Yeah. Same as we did with the column with the list view, so that the row actually knows how it should size its children. Now, if we type something hello and I press the send button, it sends it as if I would have pressed the submit button on the keyboard. All right. Last thing, just a very nice, very small, nice thing. If you will notice, let's take some more messages here, that the chat doesn't scroll like it scrolls already to the top. It doesn't like scroll with your messages, but you want to have that probably in a chat app. Again, here, this doesn't scroll. You can do this by modifying the list view here. You set it to reversed, so reverse true. This will scroll to the button, but also like reverse your chat history. So you now see the chat history is like upside down. And you fix this by setting the messages, also reverse the messages. And now you have the order again in the right order, but you have the scrolling is like now fixed to the bottom. So whenever I send something, it will stick to the button. We see our new messages coming in. Right. And with that, I think we are done with the chat app. I hope you learned something. Just to finish up how you're actually going to build your app. So there's, instead of Flutter Run, you can say Flutter Build, and then you have to provide a target. If you want to do it for Android, you say APK. If you want to do it for iOS, you say iOS. Also, you can build it as a web app, obviously, since Flutter does support web. You say build web. And again, remember, we have to, same with the Flutter Run, we have to provide our API keys, so Dart, Dart define, and so on, same as with the other command. And then you just press enter, and it will build in that case now the web, and it will build all the HTML files, all the JavaScript files for you. And then you can just, like in the case of the web, we can host it on any provider that does support a static site. So it's a static site in the end. Yeah, I think that's it. And I will give back to Vivi to wrap the workshop up.
Thanks, Kilian. I'll make it short inside of the time. So we have collected some more resources if you want to learn more about Flutter. So first of all, you can do their code labs. They're really awesome tutorials. They explain everything in a very nice way. If you have something specific in mind that you just want to do, then a cookbook will most likely have that as well. There's a widget catalog, which is just a set of their widgets, how they look like, how to use them. And also really nice is the Flutter Widget of the Week playlist on YouTube, where they will present a nice widget every week. And yeah, that's a nice way to get to know even more widgets and write even nicer code. If you want to learn more about Dart, you can take the language tour. You can also learn more about how to correctly name your functions, your files in the design guidelines. And you can use Dartpad if you just want to quickly try something in Dart without having to start up your entire Android studio. So Dartpad is kind of like an online mini IDE. We are on LinkedIn. If you have any questions, we will also be on Slack. just write us if you didn't understand something or if you want help with your app. Just write us. We are there and happy to help. On the next slide, we also have a feedback form. If you want to give us some feedback about this workshop, we'll be happy to implement that for the next one. And other than that, I think this stage is open for questions. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the input. Like, I don't know, you guys didn't see me the whole time, but I was actually like really interested in the whole thing, so I kind of listened all the way through.
Very excited.
I'm just gonna have like one question, then we can give the audience the room to ask the questions. Kilian, I've mentioned at the beginning that you're part of DSC. I've actually got the information that this is wrong. Is this true?
Yeah, I'm not official part of this.
Okay, perfect. I just want to clear the air around this topic. Like the last couple of days, we had a couple of technical difficulties. This time, it's a human error. My mistake. My bad. So let's get to the interesting part, to the questions of the audience.
So first audience question is, does Flutter support material icons by Google?
So Flutter, as we showed, has a lot of the icons already preloaded with the language. So most of the icons, or I mean, the icons that are preloaded are material icons. So yes, it does.
Okay, nice, good one.
Second question is, what's your favorite state management solution for Flutter?
Ooh, okay. I'm personally using Provider. Is my favorite, but I think this is a very controversial topic. So yeah, I think so. Use whatever you want. There are a couple of very nice state management solutions out there, and Flutter also doesn't limit you in what you use. So that is also very nice. But my personal favorite is Provider.
Thank you. The third question is, which IDE is best to code Flutter? Is it, for example, Visual Studio Code?
So we really recommend Android Studio just because, I mean, we both have most experience in that, and Flutter also is really supported in that IDE. Visual Studio Code, I think, is as well, and the others you'll have to look up if they have some like Flutter Dart plugins, because it's really nice to have something that formats your code automatically as well.
Thank you. The participants are also interested in why does a Google engineer use a Mac?
If you mean me, I'm not a Google engineer, and I prefer Mac because Mac is, in my opinion, superior when it comes to developing.
Boy.
But again, a very controversial topic.
You actually hit me with that one. I'm more of a Linux dude, that's why. So that kind of... Okay. Anyways, we'll not talk about it now.
Too controversial for this. But thank you for the answer. What do you think about React Native, and what are the benefits of Flutter?
I have not that much experience in React Native. I know what it is. In my experience, like React Native is purely for Android and iOS, if I got that right. In that case, Flutter supports more platforms. Yeah, but I can't speak any more to that because I don't know really React Native that much.
Okay, fair enough. How do you personally design the UI in Flutter, make changes to the code, and hot reload, or is there a better workflow?
It depends what you want, but most often you will already design it, like for example in Figma or Adobe, whatever, because that makes it much easier for you to actually write your code, because as we told you, you have to know what kind of widgets you want to use and how to nest them. So it's much easier if you already have a design, but of course this hot reload function makes it also possible to design on the go.
Another question is, can you give some examples of popular platforms developed using Flutter?
So Google uses it in some products. I know that it uses it in the Play console. I think this is built with Flutter also, like the not sure. But recently Toyota announced actually that it's going to use Flutter for their infotainment systems in their cars. So this is also a very nice thing.
Also, another Google app, I don't know if you know Google Health, but their app is also written in Flutter completely, as well as the mobile version of Stadia, at least as far as I know. So quite a lot of big like Google apps are written in Flutter. And of course, a lot of smaller startups are starting to use Flutter as well.
Yeah.
And finally, as a question, what's the last thing you want to give away to the participants for the Makeathon weekend? Do you have some final tips?
Just have fun. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, from my side, just try it out, give it a try, get your hands dirty, and it's really satisfying to see your first app come to life, I promise. So yeah, have fun.
Cool, thank you so much
definitely
again.
Words to live by, definitely. Just get your hands dirty, start making. Kilian, Viviana, thank you very much for the input. Thank you very much for the workshop.
Very good insights for everybody.
Now we have a break.
And then we have to talk AI for Good by Ekrem Namazi, the data and AI lead by Microsoft.
Exactly. So
See you
stay
soon.
tuned. I will see you soon.
See you in a sec. Bye.